Chapter 6, Antaeus and Kairos, May 19th, 2010. How the hell could he know the name? Thomas couldn't get the question out of his mind, and while he was feeling less certain by the moment about the nature of the universe, he was sure of one thing. He hadn't told anyone about the name Antaeus. He couldn't have, even if he had wanted to. He'd only come up with it a few days prior. He hadn't spoken to anyone about anything even vaguely connected to his work since. And yet, in his letter, Bert somehow knew. There are times in life when major decisions are based on a multitude of variables. Most big choices probably fall into this category. But there are also a few specific moments when such decisions are made based on a single, overwhelming variable. As Thomas rushed around his room throwing together one of the most absurdly packed duffel bags in history, he knew this was one of those choices and that Bert's knowledge of the Antaeus was one of those variables. It was all that mattered. The meeting with Brett, his childhood home, the letter, the device. None of it was enough to push Thomas to a point where he would actually consider heading to Petersburg to dig around in an old bush. But that single word, Antaeus, he couldn't explain away. Everything else could be discarded as lies or madness, but not that name. That name meant he didn't sleep last night. That name meant he was actually going to jump through Bert's hoops like a madman. That name absolutely infuriated him at the moment. So there he was, rushing around his uncle's home before sunrise, trying to come up with a plan. A plan for what, he thought. Pack light but for a long stay. That's what the letter had said. What was he supposed to do with that? Not to mention the first step of the plan was going to require him to go to his childhood home, which he hadn't seen in over 5 years and hadn't been inside of in over 10. And do what? Knock on the door and ask the new owners if he can dig around in their backyard? That wouldn't work. Go at night and trespass? Even if he got to the lilac bush or the alleged tunnel, what then? He was trying to pack and plan for a trip with no destination, purpose, or time of stay. Still, Thomas wasn't a fool. He understood the veiled implications that the Cranes were, in his opinion, woefully and purposely pretending to keep in the shadow. He didn't know why, but it was apparent they wanted him to be in the dark to some degree. Regardless, both men had suggested rather obviously that the tunnel coupled with the Antaeus would take him backwards. Thomas didn't believe this, of course, but he was fearful to admit that he absolutely believed it more than he had 48 hours ago. Again, that name. When he zipped up his bag at exactly 6:39 a.m., he saw for the first time just how pathetic his provisions were. 3 sets of clothes, a flashlight, a hunting knife, some rope, and a few bathroom amenities. A second, smaller bag contained the Antaeus, everything Bert had told him he'd need to connect it, and a few extra tools related to the device. He tried to reassure himself it didn't matter what he brought, because the entire endeavor was nonsense, hoping in the back of his mind that would prove true. If it didn't, he truly might win the award for the least effective packing job in history. To his utter disbelief, Thomas Redmond was on the road to Petersburg by 7 a.m. A short trip at less than 20 minutes, Thomas spent the first leg trying to decide if it was strange that he hadn't seen the house in so long. He decided it wasn't. There had been no reason for him to go there despite it being so close. The owners had changed multiple times since the 90s, as had the house presumably. Where he grew up was no longer there. It only existed in memory. Just prior to Dundee, as Thomas was about to turn off M50, his cell phone rang. It was a number from Ohio he didn't recognize, which he found odd considering how early in the morning it was. Normally Thomas would have ignored the call without a second thought, but based on how events had been unfolding for him recently, he felt he needed to answer. "Hello? Tom, is that you?" A voice whispered at an accelerated rate. "Who is this?" Thomas asked. "It's Brett. You gotta listen to me. I'm worried. Did you hear about my dad?" Thomas paused for a moment. His initial response to hearing who he was speaking with had annoyed him, but the question reminded him that the man's father had died less than 24 hours ago. He felt like a heel. Yeah, Brett, I did. I was sorry to hear that. No time, Tom. I need you to listen to me. I know we've asked a lot of weird stuff of you. That's not why I'm calling. I'm calling to warn you. Whatever you do, you need to lay low. They got Dad. They're after me, and I think you're next. Thomas was confused. Tom, are you there? Brett asked. I'm here, Brett. I don't know what you're talking about. Who are you talking about? What do you mean they got your dad? They killed him, Tom. Now on a back road, Thomas braked hard, slowing the truck down considerably. What? The article said it was a heart attack. No, Tom, these guys are the real deal. It didn't go down like they are saying. None of it adds up. Dad was found over 2 miles into the woods behind his house. I don't know how they did it, but Dad never goes into those woods. He wasn't even walking well at this point. It's a setup, and I think I'm being followed now. Thomas now fully pulled the truck off the side of the road and parked just before a set of railroad tracks. None of this made sense. Brett, I'm confused. How was he found? Have you talked to the police? That's just it. I don't know how he was found. You know how those woods are. No one ever goes through them. I got a call yesterday from the police that his body had been found and they needed to see me. When I showed up, they wouldn't let me see the body, and there were like 100 people searching the property. Thomas had to admit that seemed strange. Was it the police? He asked. There were a few police cars, yes, but it wasn't just the police. There were guys in suits, guys who looked like investigators, even a few in hazmat-type suits. But when I asked to see the body, they told me I had to wait 72 hours because the scene was being investigated. That's not normal, Tom. Whoever is out there isn't investigating a death. They are searching the property. Thomas didn't know what protocol was for a death such as Bert's, but what Brett was telling him did seem unusual, especially the hazmat suits. Brett, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, Tom, just listen to me. I need to lay low for a bit. You probably should too. I'd get out of town for a while if you can. Forget about the tunnel for now. I'm going to figure out what's going on and then I'll come see you. I just don't want anything to happen to you. Wait, what? Forget about the tunnel? Tom, look, they will be back soon, so I need you to listen to me. If you see any suspicious government-looking guys, or if you hear of any organization connected to the word Kairos, get out of there immediately and don't listen to anything they tell you. I'm worried, man. Lay low until I figure it out. Wait, Kairos. What are you talking about? What is Kairos? I have to go. Tom, they are coming to speak with me now. I'll be in touch as soon as I can. Before he could say anything else, the call disconnected. Thomas sat on the side of the road for a moment, recapping in his mind everything that had led him to this place at this time. As he put the truck in drive and pulled back onto the road, he was certain of 2 things. He was still going to Petersburg, and he was getting really tired of Brett and Bert Crane.